What if I told you humanity ended not with war, but with fun, carelessness, and heat? In the year 2030, global warming reached its peak. The frozen lands of Antarctica, once nature's final shield, melted completely, unleashing ancient viruses that had been trapped beneath the ice for millions of years. Those viruses tore through the planet's atmosphere, poisoning the very air humans breathe. In just a short time, 99% of the human race was wiped out. The last 1%, desperate to survive, watched as the world's remaining governments united one final time, pouring every last resource into building enormous rockets, hoping to find a new planet to call home. But the truth was brutal. They had no destination, no map, and not enough fuel to escape even their own galaxy. And one by one, every ship that left Earth was destroyed by the violent energy of space, leaving behind only silence and the ruins of a world that once had everything. Now, only a few survivors were left on Earth. Some of them had figured out a way to live. They discovered that at 18,000 feet above sea level, it was still possible to breathe. Among those survivors was a young woman named Eva. She lived inside a military base built high up in the mountains, along with a security robot named Arthur. It had been years since Eva had seen another human being. The loneliness was eating her alive. She knew that the few people who had decided to stay on Earth had already killed each other, fighting for the last remaining resources. Arthur, her robot companion, always guarded the camp from outside, but Eva could never understand who he was actually protecting her from, because there was no one left. One day, as usual, Eva was feeling extremely bored, so she decided to go down the mountain to collect supplies. Deep down, she always hoped that maybe this time she might find another survivor. Arthur, being a robot with no emotions, never understood Eva's feelings. Before she left, he reminded her, as always, to carry extra oxygen cylinders, because breathing below that altitude was impossible. He also warned her not to drink any water from the lower areas, since all water sources were now infected. Eva, tired of hearing the same warnings again and again, got irritated. Jokingly, she told Arthur to take care of the camp in her absence, but Arthur didn't understand the joke at all. Annoyed, Eva left for her trip. The area below the mountain was completely destroyed, filled with nothing but human trash and broken remnants of civilization. The atmosphere itself looked sick. Ignoring everything around her, Eva entered a collapsed supermarket searching for supplies. She gathered everything she needed and also picked up a small packet of lavender seeds. She knew nothing could grow in this environment anymore, but still, somewhere in her heart, she held on to a little hope. Before heading back, Eva used spray paint to write her camp coordinates on the supermarket wall. Just in case any other human survivor ever came by, they could find her. As she returned, Arthur approached her at the camp entrance, greeted her politely, and asked for the password. As usual, this password rule always irritated Eva. Every time she went out, Arthur would not let her back in without it. So this time, she purposely told him a wrong password. Instantly, Arthur raised his gun, ready to eliminate the intruder. Shocked, Eva quickly gave him the correct password, and Arthur put his weapon down, greeting her cheerfully again. He then asked her what she had done during the day. Eva, in her usual sarcastic tone, said she went down, stole a few things, partied with her friends, and now planned to hit a nightclub. Arthur didn't get a word of it. He just stood there, expressionless. Eva laughed and promised that soon she would upgrade his system so he could at least understand her jokes. Once inside, she first sanitized herself completely. Then she tried to use her radio to contact anyone who might still be alive, but no luck. The airwaves were too disturbed. So, like every day, she watered her small plants, fixed some broken tools, wrote her thoughts in her diary, and then played with a ball, throwing it against the wall to pass time. This was her daily routine, and she was sick of it. Meanwhile, Arthur spent the entire night patrolling outside the camp, keeping watch, protecting a world that no longer existed. The next day, Eva began replacing the solar panels of her base. While working, she started asking Arthur some riddles just to entertain herself. Arthur easily answered the first two, but the third one, which was about 3 robots, completely confused him. It was a riddle that only a human could solve. When he asked Eva for the answer, she laughed and refused to tell him. Then, teasing him further, she jokingly proposed marriage to him. But Arthur, still not understanding her words, just looked at her silently. Arthur, instead of responding to Eva's proposal, started explaining the dictionary definition of marriage, according to which a human and a robot could never marry. Eva smiled sadly and said, "But there's no one else left here besides you, Arthur." The moment she said that, her mood shifted. Memories came flooding back. She remembered that this camp had originally been built by her father. He had promised to return after handling an emergency mission, but after he left, she never heard from him again. It was her father who had assigned Arthur to protect her. But even now, Arthur couldn't fully understand her emotions. So, in his usual logical tone, he told her that by the year 2040, his battery would completely run out, meaning their marriage would make no sense anyway. Eva laughed and teased, Then I'll just marry a more advanced robot. That's what humans do in real life, right? Arthur, of course, didn't understand the sarcasm. Trying to change the topic, Eva began explaining how she used to go down the mountain to paint her camp's coordinates on the walls below, hoping that one day some survivor might find her. But Arthur disagreed. According to his calculations, no human could possibly survive on Earth anymore. He believed Eva was alive only because she stayed inside the camp. He grew a little angry at her recklessness. To calm him down, Eva asked him to repeat his 3 main rules. Arthur recited them one by one. A robot must never harm a human. A robot must always obey human orders. A robot must self-terminate if it ever breaks the first 2 rules. Eva then reminded him that robots were also meant to search for new energy sources. But Arthur corrected her immediately, saying he was a protection robot, not an explorer or collector, so such tasks were not part of his programming. Hearing that, Eva's face turned serious. Her tone revealed her deep hatred for protection robots. When Earth's climate had started collapsing, these same robots were deployed on international borders. Back then, the last few surviving humans had tried crossing into neighboring countries to save themselves, but without knowing the correct passwords, they were all denied entry by the protection robots and slaughtered outside the gates. That incident had led to the death of millions, and afterward, those robots' memories were erased and they were dumped like scrap metal. Ever since then, Eva could never truly trust Arthur, because she knew that if she ever forgot the password, even by accident, he wouldn't hesitate to kill her instantly. Still, for now, Eva had finished fixing the solar panels, and since it was Christmas Eve, she decided to decorate the base a little. She asked Arthur what gift he would like for Christmas. Arthur calmly replied that robots don't need gifts. Eva smirked and called him a tin can, then added, "At least try to behave a little more human, will you?" Arthur didn't answer, but he spent the entire day thinking about it. That evening, he went to Eva and told her that for his Christmas gift, he wanted new eyes, because his current visual sensors had started to blur. Eva agreed with a small smile. As they walked back toward the camp together, Arthur suddenly reminded her about the riddle with the 3 robots, asking once again for the answer. But Eva, playful as ever, refused to tell him and instead went inside, pulling out a box of Christmas decorations to start working on. The next morning, Eva wakes up and tells Arthur that she's going out to find an artificial Christmas tree, since all the real trees on Earth are almost extinct now. Once again, Arthur reminds her to wear her protective suit, carry an extra oxygen cylinder, and not to drink any outside water. But this time, Eva completely ignores his warnings and walks toward the car. Just as she's about to leave, she suddenly remembers that she left something inside. She turns back toward the facility, but Arthur stops her, asking for the password. Eva confidently tells him the password, but it's denied. The system rejects it because, as it turns out, every production robot's password automatically updates every 3 months. The new password was written inside a diary that once belonged to Eva's father, and unfortunately, that diary is still inside. Realizing this, Eva becomes extremely anxious. She doesn't have any water with her, no extra oxygen tank, and now her own robot won't let her back inside. Desperate, she begins shouting random words, trying every combination she can think of, but none of them work. Panicking, she tries to emotionally manipulate Arthur, telling him that she's the last surviving human on Earth and that she's about to die because of a simple password error. But Arthur, being a robot with no emotions, doesn't respond to her pleas. Instead, he raises his gun and points it directly at her. Terrified, Eva runs and hides behind nearby structures because Arthur can only scan a limited area at once. Eva knows that if she tries to force her way inside, Arthur will immediately shoot her. She desperately thinks of a plan to distract him and enter the camp safely. Suddenly, an idea strikes her. She returns to Arthur, pretending that nothing has happened, acting completely normal, as if their earlier confrontation never took place. Calmly, she tells him that she just needs to go inside to fetch an axe to cut down a Christmas tree. But Arthur remembers that no living trees are left in the area, so he again asks her for the password. Hearing this, Eva's face turns pale. She pleads with Arthur, begging for just 2 minutes to go inside, retrieve the diary, and tell him the password, promising that if she gives the wrong one, he can kill her immediately. But Arthur refuses. Deep down, he knows she really is Eva, yet his strict protocol forbids him from letting anyone inside without valid verification. And even if she entered and gave the wrong passwords, his primary rule prevents him from shooting unless he's absolutely certain she doesn't know the correct code. Frustrated and exhausted, Eva sits down nearby, unsure what to do next. That night, she keeps throwing stones toward Arthur's surveillance zone, trying to divert his attention. But all her efforts fail. By morning, another idea forms in her mind. Covering her face with a scarf, she approaches Arthur again, this time pretending to be a refugee from another country, seeking asylum. Under Article 14, any human whose life is in danger can request asylum in another nation. Arthur, still believing she's a refugee, begins conversing with her, but he tells her he'll need to wait and confirm with the real Eva before granting asylum. Hearing this, Eva quickly hides behind a tank, removes her disguise, and reappears as herself. She instructs Arthur that if the refugee returns, he should offer them water, and Arthur agrees. Later, when she disguises herself once more and comes back as the refugee, Arthur greets her, but instead of offering water, he asks whether she's a political refugee or a climate refugee. Eva immediately claims to be a political refugee, since climate refugees legally had no right to reside in another country. Hearing this, Arthur asks her to show her documents. Annoyed but thinking quickly, Eva fabricates a story. She tells Arthur she's a war refugee, explaining that her village was attacked by a group of rebels who killed all her relatives and even tried to shoot her as well. Since Eva had to escape in a hurry during the rebel attack, she didn't have any documents with her. But Arthur, still following his asylum protocol, kept insisting on verifying her documents before proceeding further. By now, Eva was extremely thirsty, so she asked Arthur, as a refugee, to give her some water. But Arthur refused, explaining that he could only share water once the real Eva had drunk hers first. He too hadn't consumed water for a long time, and giving it away could risk his own functionality. Frustrated and weak, Eva walked back to the same tank and hid behind it again. Later, she tried approaching Arthur while pretending to be a stranger this time, but that too failed. Exhausted and disappointed, she returned to her hiding spot once more. That night, she spent yet another sleepless night behind the tank, without food, without water. By morning, her condition had worsened badly. Still, gathering her strength, she dragged herself toward Arthur and once again tried to convince him that she truly was the last surviving human on Earth. But Arthur didn't believe her, because in his system's memory, he had already encountered a refugee, which was, of course, her own disguise. Hearing this, Eva realized she had fallen into her own trap, but she was too tired to argue with a tin can anymore. While talking, Arthur mentioned an energy center nearby, a facility where there might still be humans since its lights occasionally flickered on and off. Eva, however, dismissed the idea, saying it was probably full of mindless robots. But Arthur insisted that she should go and check, because without the password, he still couldn't allow her inside the camp. Eva refused to go at first, but her thirst had become unbearable. She went to her car searching for water but found none. Instead, she discovered a packet of lavender seeds she had once picked up from a store. She planted them into the soil, whispering to them to grow, as if that could somehow help her survive. And just then, another idea struck her. Eva, still posing as herself, approached Arthur again and said that if he let her inside, she would tell him the answer to the riddle of the 3 robots. But Arthur refused her deal, so she tried again, this time offering the riddle's answer in exchange for just a little water. Yet Arthur denied her request once more. With no other option left, Eva decided to head toward the power plant Arthur had mentioned. Reaching there, she struggled to get inside, climbing and squeezing through tight spaces until she finally made her way through a wall. Once inside, she looked around desperately for signs of life, but found none. Everything inside was fully automated. Panicking, she began searching for food or water. At first, she found toporeng, and meanwhile, her oxygen tank was running dangerously low. Desperate, she rushed toward a door that seemed to have bottled water stored inside. She tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Her oxygen depleted completely, forcing her to remove her mask, instantly exposing her to the deadly virus that still lingered on Earth. Even then, she didn't stop. She grabbed an axe and broke the door open, stepping inside, only to find that the bottles didn't contain water at all. Her disappointment turned to despair. She stumbled into a nearby bathroom where a shower head was dripping faint drops of water. But remembering Arthur's warning that any open water source could be deadly, she hesitated and decided not to drink it. Barely alive, she returned to the camp. By now, her body was failing, and she realized she had only one option left: to destroy Arthur. Gathering all her strength, Eva climbed into her car, started the engine, and drove it at full speed toward the tank. She leapt out just in time as the car rammed straight into Arthur. The vehicle exploded into pieces, but since Arthur was a high-grade security combat robot, he survived the impact completely unscathed. Instead, the car was obliterated into fragments. By morning, Eva was now on the brink of death. Her breathing was shallow, and her vision had started to fade. Just then, Arthur approached her and began talking about what had happened the previous night, how someone had tried to destroy him by driving a car straight into him. He told her that the refugee and the stranger, the 2 disguises she had used, were still hiding behind the other tank. But by now, Eva's condition was so critical that she could barely comprehend anything Arthur was saying. With trembling lips, she once again tried to ask Arthur for water. But Arthur, following his strict security protocol, refused to move from his post. His only duty was to protect the camp, no matter what. Then, in her semi-conscious state, Eva began to hallucinate. She saw her father standing beside her, smiling warmly, offering her a glass of water. For a moment, she felt peace, But when her senses briefly returned, she realized it wasn't her father at all. It was Arthur, still standing there, repeatedly asking her for the password. Confused and weak, Eva could barely respond. Arthur then told her quietly that if she truly were the last surviving human on Earth, he would have helped her. But since, according to his sensors, the refugee and the stranger were still alive behind the other tank, he couldn't. As her mind slipped further into delirium, Eva saw herself in another vision, the world restored to how it once was. The skies were blue again, cities were alive, and she was wearing her favorite dress, walking through the streets joyfully, surrounded by life. But reality quickly returned. In truth, she lay dying on the barren ground, her lips cracked, her body motionless. Arthur stood beside her, still performing his programmed duty. He told her that once she died, the emergency protocol would activate, allowing him to change the access password. He even added, in his mechanical innocence, that she need not worry about humanity anymore since, according to his logic, the refugee and the stranger were still alive. Listening to his emotionless words, Eva finally succumbed to thirst and exhaustion. She died there, in front of him, her hand resting beside the patch of lavender seeds she had planted earlier. As her body went still, Arthur's system detected her death and triggered the emergency mode. Following his protocol, he automatically created a new access password, Lavender, and with that, the story ends. So what do you think? Should emotions be programmed into robots so that in the future, when humanity becomes this advanced, we don't face such tragic consequences again? Tell us your thoughts in the comments section. If you liked this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll meet again in the next one. Until then, goodbye. So what do you think? Should emotions be programmed into robots so that in the future, when humanity becomes this advanced, we don't end up facing such heartbreaking consequences again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this story, let's hit 100 likes on this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing sci-fi stories like this one. We'll meet again in the next video. Until then, stay curious and goodbye.